What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some old school Goa-trance from two of the all-time masters, or I think at this point it was still maybe a three-piece. Basically, we're talking Astral Projection. Anyone who knows the world of Goa-trance and psychedelic trance will be familiar with Astral Projection. They got their start under a different name, I think it was SFX, and in the early days there was a bit of an evolving membership. At first, I think it was 3 guys, maybe then a 4th guy joined. Then one of the original members went back to the US. They're originally from Israel. And then I think he came back and one of the other guys left. But for a long period of time, since the late 90s, certainly since the early 2000s, it's been a 2-piece. And it continues to be a 2-piece to this day. And we're going to listen to an album they released in 1997 called Dancing Galaxy, and we're going to hear the title track, Dancing Galaxy. Now, it is a very long tune. I think it's just over 9 minutes, so I won't talk too long at the outset of this one. I will just say this, along with some others like Another World, which actually was a tune I think they made under the name SFX, and then years later, as Astral Projection sort of reworked a little bit, made it a bit expanded and a bit fuller, and then released it again as a title track for one of their albums. But as with that tune, this is one of their calling cards, so let's give it a listen. This is Astral Projection and their tune Dancing Galaxy from the album of the same name, 1997. Let's listen to it at the right tempo. How about that? That might be good.
The spice extends life.
I believe
The spice expands consciousness.
a sample much used. Pablo Gargano uses it in
The
a
spice
track.
is vital to space travel.
Basically, it's from the David Lynch 1980s Dune. Oof. into the sky melodic flourishes is so Astral Projection.
Spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel.
That's a real word. Notice there was barely any gap between the first and the second track, which, you know, is fine if you've mixed out, but if that's like the end of your set right there, you gotta like really bring down the channel level quick to make sure people are like, wait, what was that? Was that something else? But yeah, it's an all-time classic. Most of the Astral Projection catalog can be described in that way. This, again, it's not their earliest stuff. I think their very earliest stuff under the SFX name was like 94 maybe even 93. And then by like 94, 95, I think they have their first couple albums, which are, you know, huge. And yes, I have all the Astral Projection albums and a number of their early EPs, as well as some of their more rare but still extant recent work, meaning they did a remix of Another World a few years back. I forget what label it was on. Was it Sun Trip? But yeah, I have a couple copies of that. So they make a lot of digital only stuff in recent years, but still occasionally come out with a vinyl release. And admittedly, there was a long gap between the end of their original run, which was like the early 2000s, like '03. I'm trying to remember what the last year, or the last album, the year for that. And then there was like a 10, 15 year gap, and then they put out some more stuff, including a remix album where it was like their tracks and I think some of their remixes and then other people remixing some of their classic tracks. But there was a long gap, but I do believe they're still somewhat active, still playing events, I think, and making occasional tunes. But the real golden period, I would say, is like 95 till about like, well, I guess it depends on who you ask, because I think this and Another World were seen as like their last great original albums, and then they have a couple albums in the early 2000s which I think are fantastic, but which maybe don't get as much attention as their stuff from the mid-90s. And this is maybe, again, the tail end of the ultra golden period, though for me, the great stuff continued until they took that hiatus. And again, even in recent times, they've made some really cool tracks. In fact, they made a track for that Sun Trip. What was the name of the... Oh, I forget the name of... I know I reacted to their tune from it, as well as a tune called Icon, Eikon, from Raw. And that was a Sun Trip release where it was all new tunes, but calling on all these old classic groups that were still around. So, yeah, they still do make tunes, but their most famous period is, I would say, like 94, 95 till about like 98. And yeah, it's just a great track, lots of ethereal, fluttering melodies, that main electric synth melody in the middle of the track, the deep driving Goa-trance bass line, that heavy thumping Goa kick, which is a staple of most of their old school tunes, and then lots of great acid work, this really wibbly, like quivering, supporting type of acid work, where it's never like the lead. You know, there's a a sub-style of Goa-trance from back in the day that I like to call acid Goa, because it's Goa-trance where the main feature of the tune is the acid work. A lot of the like Green Nuns of the Revolution stuff, and maybe some hallucinogen tracks too. And although Astral Projection are more the like spacey, melodic style of Goa-trance, they do have acid work on a lot of their tracks. And I would say Power Gen is a tune from them, which I think I reacted to, where I would call that acid Goa. So a lot of their tunes, it's not acid Goa per se, but it almost always has some good acid work. And once again, you take a sample, which again, this sample from the 1980s version of Doom, which I think was done by David Lynch, it shows up in so many different places, you know, like techno records, trance records, I'm sure, you know, some Sybient and so on. But yeah, it's a classic set of samples. The spice, you know, extends life and so on. You'll hear that in so many tunes from the 90s. So yeah, it just fits perfectly with the atmosphere of this track and the theme and the title of the tune and the album, the Dancing Galaxy. You can see a big spiral galaxy dancing to music like this. So again, big shout out to Astral Projection, as well as all old school Goa artists and modern Goa produced or released on vinyl, which again, Goa-trance, Psytrance, it was one of the first styles to go mainly digital, so the fact that you can still get some new Goa-trance on vinyl I think is fantastic. Let me know what you think of the tune, and Luca and I will see you next time. Peace.